This week we're going to be talking to my good buddy Ed, otherwise known as the Sandman on YouTube and in the Conclave podcast. We're going to be talking about his really unique take on the narrative behind his Genestealer cult army and why he loves Genestealer cults so much.
Awesome. Perfect. Right, okay. I didn't practice an intro. I should have done that. So, yes, listeners of Forge the Narrative, hello there. I am Quipster. This is the very first segment I've done with Paul on Forge the Narrative. Obviously, you can tell it's very professionally done. I have literally no idea what I'm doing. Today, I've got with me my buddy, the Sandman, and we're going to talk about Genestealer cults. Sandman, how are you doing today?
I am good. Always good to talk about Genestealer cults.
Amazing. So, this actually really surprised me. You started Genestealer cults as your lockdown army, right?
Yeah, I think you were actually. I think you might actually have been the final push. Now that I think about it, because it was a proper
Really?
yeah, it was a. You're very supportive friend, which is terrible for Warhammer. Because as soon as I was like, yeah, I quite like the idea of Genestealer cult, you were like, yes, you should totally do that. And now I've got 5,000 points.
Amazing. I was going to say though, like, what aside from me giving you the final push, like, what drew you to Genestealer cults in the first place?
I think a bunch of stuff. I think primarily how they played. I always thought looked really interesting. To be honest, I've always liked Xenos. So you know, my other armies are Tau and Dark Angels. And the thing is about those two, I'm hoping it changes more in 9th edition. And in fact, Dark Angels have got a lot more complex in terms of their rules. But they were quite simple to play in 8th edition. And I quite liked the idea of playing something a bit more complicated to challenge myself. So I thought, yeah, Genestealer cults would be the way to go. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! So it was always more of a tabletop thing rather than like a lore kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the lore specifically, there was no like Genestealer cult story that I particularly loved. I did have a good idea for what I wanted my cult to be, which was kind of a marrying of a bunch of different things. So my first army in 40k was the size of the Emperor, which is an amazing scheme that I did not do any justice to. And so I was like, right, I'm going to do an agrarian, an agri-world Genestealer cult, but call them the Scythes of the Four-Armed Emperor. And so I thought that would be funny. And then I came up with a bunch of like minor conversions, I guess you would call them, because I'm not a major converter. I can't like build extravagant things out of green stuff. But for example, I can make like little farmer hats for all of the neophyte hybrids. I can make little bundles of fruit for all of the acolytes. Like I made some hay bales to put on the Achilles Ridge runners, and I made scythes to give the aberrants. Lots and lots of little things that when you put them all together, it creates quite a unique looking army. So I kind of I wanted to have an army as well that I think had a lot of conversion work in it, because I'd never properly done that before. So that was kind of the other reason.
That's amazing. I mean, going to the army itself, like I've seen some of the conversions you've made, and they are outstanding. Like the hay bales, like how did you do them? You got to explain to people about that.
So I can't remember the name. There's actually a guy who he actually has like 1 million subscribers. So I don't feel that bad now, but he has like 1 million subscribers, and he does like model trains videos. It's clearly a much bigger community than Warhammer, but yeah, there's actually a lot of community. Sorry, there's lots of videos out there for how to do kind of farming equipment and farming models and things like that for model trains. So I actually could find these videos. Obviously you have to change the scale ever so slightly with Warhammer, but yeah, and then it actually fit perfectly. So I actually had this huge support there from YouTube.
That is amazing. I mean, when it came to like listening to you design your lore and how you're going to tie everything together, like one of the things I think is like amazing about your army is Spud.
Spud is an exceptional figure in the lore of the Scythes, Four-Armed Emperor. So the thing is about Spud that's quite funny is that generally speaking, there should only ever be one patriarch, because another Genestealer that lands on the planet wouldn't need to undergo the evolution that the patriarch has had. However, I found this model that was one of the old Rotrager models. And if you're thinking of the really awesome model of the Patriarch sitting in the chair, it's not that one. It's another one that is just, you probably haven't seen. It's the ugliest model I think GW have ever made. And by that I mean it's brilliant. It's so fantastically ugly. And so I was like, so I had this idea that there was like an existing Patriarch there on the agri world, but because it's an agri world, he just grew fat and lazy, just eating from the fruits of the farm. And so when Lord Avery, who is the new Patriarch, when he arrived, he actually he actually underwent the genesis that turned him into a Patriarch, which he shouldn't have had to do if Spud wasn't just a mess. And when I play them, because I sometimes have played them both, then I actually always use Spud as like the Patriarch that I'm going to throw up, and it's always very thematic to me because he's the one that dies straight away every single game. So it actually works out really well.
That is amazing. I love that. All these little like tidbits that make an army like super personal and super unique. Like even down to the way you've done your basing. Like your basing is like exceptional.
I was very proud of this. Yeah, I was very proud of this. I made a terrible decision to actually use GW products in this one. I generally speaking always use GW products where I can, but Stirland Battlemire gets expensive quite quickly, especially by like the 5th pot. So like I've done it all on ploughed fields. So what I've done is as you can imagine, I've just kind of lumped on Stirland Battlemire and then drawn lines through them to make it look like it's a field that's been ploughed, and then I just have got loads and loads of foliage and just dotted them along. So it takes a little bit of time, but yeah, it has a really, really cool effect when it's done. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody do it, actually. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, I've not seen it done either. You've even done it for what are those? What are the little buggies called? Are those the Ridge Runners?
Yeah, Achilles Ridge Runners. Yeah. So that's quite cool. I always liked. It's always one of those things that I like to do is when I have vehicles on bases to have it look like they've got tracks behind them. So I've always enjoyed that.
That is cool. I love that.
Fields. Yeah.
I mean, how many games so far have you played with the Genestealer cults? It can't have been many, because we only got... there'll be people living outside the UK listening to this. We had a bit of a reprieve from lockdown, sort of in the summer of 2020. So we all desperately went out and started playing as much Warhammer as we could. Like, how much did you get to play with the cult?
Yeah, I only played like half a dozen games, which was a shame. To be honest, it's been a weird time, because the game is in that weird period pre-codex. Well, pre most people having a codex. So it's probably like if you could choose the time to have the lockdown, it would be now, right? Like that. Like as weird as it sounds, solely in terms of the Warhammer community, very narrowly, because it's always a weird time. Like with the index period in 8th edition. I don't know if you remember that. Like that was such a weird time. To not like have special rules and kind of just going off data sheets much more and things like that.
Yeah, I mean there were armies that didn't have like strats, for example.
Yeah,
like there was a long time where like people really complained about like orcs, for example, like not having these strats during 8th edition because they just didn't have
they were
codex
quite late.
yet.
They were really late. Yeah. And everyone's
exactly.
like, they're making them late because Gazgul is definitely coming, and then Gazgul did not come for a while. Yeah.
Well, not for a while. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. Like, having seen how Genestealer cults played in 8th and how they were this, like, amusing boogeyman for, like, a week before they got, like, nerfed the crap out of.
Yeah. It was weird.
Like, where... Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say it was kind of a weird thing because they got hit hard. I actually think what happened was because they were essentially a new army, and by that, what I'm talking about is that the Genestealer cults came out at the end of 7th edition, and then 8th edition hit. Like the codex was out for like a month. So when they got their codex in 8th edition, it was kind of like a brand new army because they were finally got like fully fleshed out rules that were going to be tried and tested for a long time because they were on the index up until that point. And so there was a huge amount of oh, this is new and this is good and this seems overpowered, blah, blah, blah. And so GW hit them hard with the hammer straight away, and they were then dead and stayed dead competitively for quite a long time. Oh, well, no, until today. They've never really recovered. It's the kind of thing. They are an army that when you see somebody go like top 8 with Genestealer cults, like, you know, every couple of months, you go on, yeah. It's incredible.
It's that big deal. It's like now, if someone won a tournament with Tau, everyone would just be like, "Wow, how do you do that?"
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what. That's one of the reasons I really like Genestealer Cult as well, because I play Tau also, and the thing is about Genestealer Cults is because even though they're quite bad through like points efficiency and strats costing too much, things like that, the rules are actually complex enough that I still feel like I stand a better chance with a much better chance, I should say, sorry, with Genestealer Cults against, say, one of the top armies in the game, because I still feel like I have, you know, shenanigans, I guess is the proper word. I feel like I have shenanigans I can pull and things I can try. I don't mean gotchas as such. I just mean, like, you know, that you have some really interesting plays. Tau, on the other hand, the problem with Tau is that, like, there's just not a lot to them. They have like 3 special rules that are throughout the book, and they nerfed the drone one, which was the right decision, but they've nerfed that, and now they just don't really have anything. So I don't understand how you could win with Tau, because you just don't have the play. At least with Genestealer Cults, you can try and do something crazy, and, you know, deep strike 3 massive blobs of flamer acolytes, or, you know, what? There's a bunch of different things you could try, and you just can't do that with Tau. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, sort of going back to the hobby aspect a little bit at the moment, one of the things that I've always been super interested about Genestealer Cults is their model range is so new and all plastic and so stunningly detailed. Was that intimidating when you first got into it?
Kind of. Yeah, it was. I'll be honest. I mean, you're definitely right. Like, the model range is easily, I think, probably the most underrated model range in 40k. Like, everybody knows how great the Sisters range is now, and the Primaris range ranges, the Necron ranges, but the Genestealer Cult range is one of those brand new armies, and the models are amazing. I was painting my Atalan Jackals a couple of months ago, and they were just you know, when you paint a model and that GW's made, and you just go, God, that's good. Like, it's so good.
Yeah.
Like, the Jackals are the women who ride bikes, I should say, if that wasn't clear. And they're just such incredible models, and they've really nailed them. They're just so creepy, and they're so mad, but they also just kind of fit. They fit in well. They've really nailed it.
Yeah, I love this utilitarian, industrial theme that they've got going on, because they've got things that you would expect to find in the Imperium, but that you've never actually seen, like the quad bikes, for example.
Yeah,
the dirt bikes, the little the dune buggies and stuff like that, and it just all brings it all together really well, and I love that.
Yeah. They're a fantastically cool army, and they're this really cool thing that. So I think not everybody will be aware that Genestealer Cults are an old army from road trader days, and they used to have models. It wasn't a particularly fleshed out army, and so that's why they brought them back into the narrative. Because, well, actually, they kind of always were in the narrative talked about. Actually, that's probably true, but as models, they weren't in. And so it's this really cool thing that they've brought back into 40k, I think. So fun.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a strange one as well, because they got this nerf bat straight out the gate when they became this new faction. They had this whole new model range, and it's basically a horde army, the way that you're quote and unquote supposed to play them, right?
Yeah, I think that's... Yeah, generally speaking, that's the case. They have a couple of very powerful strats, which, you know, incentivize that. That's the case for a lot of armies, I guess. But yeah, that is definitely... Yeah, if you want efficiency, that's probably the way to go. Certainly.
I mean, what I was going to say by that is, they've had all of these impediments to essentially people playing them as an army, which is why, I think you and one other guy, you two are the only 2 people I've ever met that play Genestealer Cults. And it's quite rare at the moment. Going into the future, what do you think Genestealer Cults are going to need in their next codex to make them more popular, more viable?
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that, because I totally agree. People point out, correctly that GW are a toy selling company, and therefore the rules don't matter. But the thing is, Genestealer Cults are a great example where the rules matter
They
a
do.
lot. Like there's a
Yeah.
reason. There's a reason Blood of the Phoenix didn't sell and Indomitus did. People do like Space Marines, but also, come on, like it's not comparable. So
I mean, the Blade Guard alone.
which I will also say is a terrible idea if that's the kind of person you are, because I got my Genestealer cult so cheap off eBay. A lot of stuff, like I got my Aberrants, I probably averaged like a couple of quid per Aberrant. They were so cheap because Aberrants were spammed before, and then they got nerfed very heavily, and so they kind of flooded the market, and so they were really cheap. So. Sorry, my cat just jumped on the oven.
Your cat is adorable, man.
Yeah, he is. He's a good boy, except when he's on the oven. That's the only time. Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of stuff I would like them to have. So one of the important things as well about Genestealer Cult is that the army is designed to deep strike, and that's very tough to from a rules writing perspective, because the deep striking, as we know, is very random, and that's one of the things that the rules writers have put in very deliberately into the game, and so it's very tough to make Genestealer cults viable in that respect. So what I would do is I would make Genestealer cults have very reliable charges, and by that I mean, like, you know, I would take like the +1 to charge that for cult of the Four-Armed Emperor get, and I would put it across all Genestealer cult, for example, and then you can stack that with the Clamavus, and all of a sudden you've got a bunch of 7-inch charges. I know that sounds very, very good, but the thing is, the army is designed to deep strike, and if it can't do it, it really struggles. Like, it can't just walk up the field. All of our vehicles are very easy to kill. I guess that's something else. Making vehicles much cheaper would be a huge way. The problem with Genestealer cult in ninth, I think, is that there's a couple of problems. The main one is holding objectives. I always make fun of people for this, because people describe lots of armies as glass cannons. Genestealer cults are absolutely made of paper. Like, I don't have a 3-up. I don't have a 3-up save in the army. My vehicles are toughness 5. The toughest one is toughness 7. They have like 4-up saves. They just die to. They will die to bolters. They will die to, like, my Achilles Ridge Runners, the buggies. They will die to las guns. You know, they'll do significant work. So they need. It's tough. I don't want them to make, let's say, Aberrants tougher, but I would like some mechanics to allow Genestealer cults to survive. So, for example, the old wrapping and trapping was a good way for that. So I would potentially look at a way for Genestealer cults to be able to wrap and trap, but like, it's their specific rules. They basically get the old wrapping and trapping back. So, you know, something like that and other things like that. So clever things that you can do to survive, I think would be really, really cool. There's lots of little things I would do. There's so a lot of the units just really fell by the wayside. So hybrid metamorphs, for example, I don't think I've ever seen play. They're the ones that they look like acolyte hybrids, and basically as the Hive fleet approaches, they mutate and they become a bit more powerful, and they're just like a bit more expensive, but without obsec is basically what they are. So they kind of need a place, which would be great. So yes, survivability is the main thing. They do have a lot of stuff that's really good. The psychic powers are amazing. They own the deployment phase, which is always going to be good every single edition. I'm also interested to just see how complicated they get, because I've been doing a series recently with a friend of mine called Alfred Farias, who we've been doing a series on the gotchas of each army, and it's shocked to me just how complicated, when you go through Death Guard and Necrons, how complicated those books are. There is so much to them, because people, you know, so the thing about Genestealer cults, as I say, that people always kind of associate with them, is that it's quite a complicated army. But Necrons and Death Guard now have more rules than they do, I would say, by quite a substantial amount. So what they'll do to Genestealer cult, I just can't wait. I want them to be. I want them to be this like crazy complicated army that is off-putting to new players, for example. But for people that play the game for a long time, like me, and are obsessed with the game, it's a unique challenge. So I really hope they stay like that.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. And this is something I think we've seen in the Space Marine Codex, something we've seen in the Death Guard Codex especially, this narrative rules writing. Like, if you look at, what's the Death Guard rule for the sort of creeping -1 toughness? What's that called?
Oh, gifts, contagion. Gifts of contagion.
Gifts of contagion. That rule is so narrative and so thematic. I would love to see Yeah, and I'd love to see a lot more of that in all the upcoming codexes. For myself as a Custodes player, I'd love to see it like more individual, character-based stuff. And for Genestealer cults, I'd love to see the more tricksy elements. Because like the lore behind the Genestealer cults, for people who don't know, is that they spend like thousands of years or hundreds of years like working into the deeper levels of society so that they can just all of a sudden take it over. So like I love the thought of like that happening.
Yeah, and you can totally have that in the game. So I would like it to be the case that when you play against Genestealer cults, and this is something Genestealer cult player pays for in points, but there are things that could happen or strats that could happen that prohibit you as the opponent of the Genestealer cult player. So, for example, one of the classic thing that they would do in the lore would be to sacrifice, ammo supply. To hit ammo supplies. So as you're going to shoot, right, something could happen. I don't know exactly what. Like maybe you run out of ammo turn 5. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. But things like that be really fun and interesting and really make them this, and Death Guard are a lot like that, and Necrons are to some degree, where when you play against them, you really have to know them. If you want to play them well, like the Contagion rule, it's such a powerful rule. But you will forget about it when you play against Death Guard, I suspect, because there's so much going on with Death Guard. That's what I mean. So, like, there's going to be plenty of times you're playing against Death Guard, and you'll be like, oh, damn, yes, I'm -1 toughness there. Completely forgot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm so excited for GC Cults to get the 9th treatment, but unfortunately, they generally will be last.
It's always the way.
Yeah.
And I think that's about all the time we have for. So, in the meantime, Sandman, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, you find me at the Sandman Hobby on YouTube and on Instagram.
Excellent. And I have been Quipster. You can find me on Instagram and YouTube at QuipsterNerd. Thanks, Paul, for letting me have this segment. I'm sure I'll see you guys in the next one.